思議な話もあったもんやな。時代を動かすはずの男が時代遅れの男に切られ死ぬ。しかもこの世に存在しないはずのもう一人の自分に切られることになるんやからな。なあ、坂本龍馬さんよ。
No amount of words can describe the pants-shitting excitement that I felt when Like a Dragon Ishin was finally revealed at Sony State of Play last December. Now, for people unfamiliar with the Yakuza series, this moment is important because this game had not been localized in English for the better part of 9 years. So, today I want to take a look at the game and take a look at its historical value in the Yakuza series specifically, and why it is such an important release for the series. This is going to be also a very off-the-cuff look at Ishin. I only have a list of bullet points and I'm going to be talking off the top of my head for a lot of this. So without further ado, let's get into it. I am so excited to be talking about Like a Dragon Ishin today. Let's wind back the hands of time and talk about the time it was released in. So, Ryuga Gotoku Ishin came out in only Japan in 2014 for both PS3 and PS4. The reason why this is such a curious and tumultuous time period for the Yakuza series is because Yakuza 5 had come out 2 years prior to Ishin and had not seen a localization yet, despite the series having a pretty good track record for these. Most games in the series did get localized, especially the controversial Dead Souls. So if I had to maybe attribute it to something, I would probably say that low sales figures were a big deciding factor and not deciding to localize Ishin right away. Yakuza 5 would eventually get localized 3 years after the Japanese release date, but even then it was only a limited digital run, so it didn't have a physical printing here in the United States. The Yakuza series had always had its little niche, but maybe not enough to justify an expensive localization on this scale. So now that Yakuza 5 had finally come out, fans were asking, when's Ishin? They'd be waiting for a while, unfortunately. I don't personally think it was until Yakuza 0 that the series had kind of exploded in the West. This is for a huge cornucopia of reasons. I think Yakuza 0 was very successful because a lot of big names played it, and also all of its weird clippable moments just kind of showing up on Twitter kind of made word-of-mouth marketing very, very strong for Yakuza 0, and it helped usher in this renaissance period for the series. 0 was a good starting point for a lot of people. You could kind of just jump in and start with the series there. Then the remake of the first game also came out shortly after, which, again, good starting point. I would argue the best starting point for the series. And then Kiwami 2 came out, and then right after 3, 4, and 5 got their remasters, and then suddenly the series was very accessible here in the West. You could play the whole series back to back to back to back on just about anything that could run it, and this was huge for the Yakuza series. Swept up in all of these localizations, Ishin left in the dust. So again, fans were asking, when's Ishin? And I think truthfully the localizers kind of had a lot on their plate at the time and just straight up didn't have the time to do it. I think a lot of the newer titles kind of took priority and had more of a appeal in the series, especially now that there are more people jumping on at the starting point. So again, it kind of felt like Ishin was left by the wayside, especially as there was a very big push for same-day localizations, which we saw with Lost Judgment, where the teams work extremely hard to get the English versions out on the same day as the Japanese ones, which, holy shit, amazing efforts. Thank you, localization team, if you're watching this. But I think one of the biggest factors in Ishin's localization here in the West was the success of games like Ghost of Tsushima, which took place in a similar setting that helped kind of bring new interest to these settings and these characters that maybe the localization team took a look at and were like, hey, this'll sell. On the topic of it getting localized, I do own Ryuga Gotoku Ishin. Me and my friend had this kind of running joke where we were like, okay, the moment you buy it and it arrives at your doorstep, it's going to be announced for a localization right after. And guess what happened without fail? But again, I do think Ishin's localization is the product of a lot of very big factors working in tandem with each other. And then once it was finally revealed at the State of Play, again, might have shit myself a little bit. So it is very significant that this game is even here to begin with. So enough of the history lessons. let's jump into another history lesson. So this game takes place in the 1860s, which is the Bakumatsu era of Japan. It centers around a swordsman named Sakamoto Ryoma, who leaves his hometown to study swordsmanship in Edo for a year, and then once he comes back, he finds out that there's a bunch of ugly jerks kind of pushing around their titles and their classes on people as a means to push them and oppress them and just keep them down. And his disgust for this kind of lands him in a lot of hot water. But his adoptive father, Yoshida Toyo, bails him out of jail, and that he has a very big plan for Tosa. And his dreams for Tosa are ambitions that are also shared by Ryoma's adoptive brother, Takechi Hanpeita. Toyo believes that the three of them can kind of kickstart a revolution and end this stupid class war in Tosa. But before the three of them really start to make moves, Toyo is assassinated. And of course, Ryoma is there at the scene of the crime. Ryoma goes as far as to say that he will leave Tosa and not return until his criminal is brought to justice. But what Ryoma doesn't know is that his search for his father's assassin could potentially change the course of Japanese history forever. Now, I think Ishin's story is among the best in the series. It takes a while to get going, but once it has its hooks in you, oh my god, it's so hard to put down. There were so many moments where I would be like, okay, I'm gonna stop playing this, I'm gonna put this down, and I'm going to just come back later, my eyes are burning or whatever. And then something would happen that would kind of grip me in a very interesting way, and I'd be like, oh, okay, fine, I'll play for a little bit longer. And then a little bit longer turned into 9 hours. So yes, slow burn, political thriller, very dialogue, narrative heavy, cutscene heavy, but once it has its hooks in you, it is so hard to put down. You may have noticed that a lot of the characters that I've been showing are characters that were very prominent in the Like a Dragon series, and you may be wondering, okay, why is Kiryu this guy in the 1860s? And to that I say, don't worry about it. The team is essentially using the likenesses of the Like a Dragon story to help familiarize you with these ancient Bakumatsu era, like, real historical figures. So while Majima might be looking a little different, this is still your baby girl. And they used your familiarity with these characters to tell this story, and also call back to the series in very interesting ways. So it pays to really understand the series because Ishin kind of winks and nods at it in little ways that you might not notice at first, but when you think about it, you're like, oh, this is like that one scene, which, very cool. Really appreciate that as a longtime fan of the series. Next, we'll go into the gameplay. Now, I like the gameplay in Like a Dragon Ishin a lot because I think it serves as the mechanical foundation for the style switching in Yakuza 0 and then Yakuza Kiwami. So we can see a lot of the groundwork laid out here for what we're going to see moving forward in 0, Kiwami, and all of that after. So let's take a closer look. First up, we have Brawler. And Brawler is going to be the style that I think a lot of people are familiar with. It is the classic hand-to-hand style that has been always present in the series. It has very low damage output compared to all of the other styles I'll be talking about. I think it is the most flexible. You have a lot of really cool defensive options. You have a parry, which I really like. And you also have the ability to quick swap out of this style. Much later on, you learn the ability, which I think makes it the most flexible style, but again, you're going to be fighting at disadvantage a lot in the Brawler style. The game describes it as a style meant only for the brave or something like that. Next we have Gunman. And I think Gunman is probably one of the more interesting styles in the series. I've never seen a style dedicated solely to a firearm in this game, which I think is very funny. This is a zoner style. There's a lot of options here that kind of lend to playing at a distance and picking off your enemies one by one. You only really have one thing to do in this style, and it's shoot people. With your normal rounds and also your craftable enhanced rounds. But that being said, it is very weak in close quarters. Once you're cornered or swarmed by a group of enemies at like mid to close range, you're kind of fucked. Unless you have the I'm not gonna sugarcoat it counter, which is basically just a tiger drop with a pistol. But still, at close range, you're going to be having a pretty bad time. Swordsman is very cool. I would compare it most closely to Saejima styles and also the Tiger style, because it utilizes charged attacks to kind of carve and slice up your enemies. I think it is a very cool and cinematic style, but it's only really suited for one-on-one encounters and kind of suffers in like the big crowded set pieces that this game likes to throw at you. Really would only use this for boss fights and when you want to style on your enemies. My favorite style in the game, and I would venture to say in the series, Wild Dancer. It is the ultimate offensive style. You have no defense. In fact, you have a parry with pretty tight timing, and if I'm not mistaken, no block button. But it trades all of this defense away for overwhelming offense and pressure. You can overwhelm your enemies with all of your strikes, and you can also shoot, just not as strong as the gunman style, and you can weave in and out of battles with a dodge, and all of your moves can be cancelled in and out of each other, making it a very technical style, but one that I think has the best offensive potential. The touch I love the most is that because this is a wild dance style, once you switch to this style, the music will shift to have these sort of flamenco vibes, these castanets, these Spanish guitars, and it is so freaking cool. And yes, all of the other styles have their own version of the song, but Wild Dancer just has so much style and grace to it. It is the best style. This would form the foundation of Yakuza style switching, so I think it's very interesting to see it start here. So another important aspect of battle are the trooper cards. These are equipable cards that give you various enhancements in battle, and this was a very controversial thing when it was first unveiled, but I personally did not use them for my playthrough. It's not that I didn't like them or anything, I just felt like it would mess with the game balance in a really weird way. In the original release of Ryuga Gotoku Ishin, you could only use them in these challenge battles in these caves, but in this version of the game you can use them anywhere, and I personally felt like it would make the game either too easy or whatever, so I was like, okay, I'll save this for a New Game Plus. And I am happy to say that at least on normal difficulty you can get through the game no problem without them. I only use them in the challenge dungeons again. No boss fights, no long battles, no street battles. So I think Trooper cards, fine and fun addition, but I didn't personally use them much, if at all. With that being said though, Ishin is pretty tough. I would venture to say that it is the hardest Yakuza game. That's because it asks things of you that you normally wouldn't expect from a Yakuza game. A lot of the boss encounters kind of hinge on you memorizing attack patterns and weaving in and out of those to make sure that you don't get blown up. There's one specific boss encounter that, holy shit, rocked my shit until I just kind of took it patiently. And yes, the damage feels very high even on normal, so it felt, at least to me, that the game wants you to take it slow and kind of understand the flow of battle before rushing in head first. But I think the toughest thing about the game's difficulty is that money feels very hard to come by without doing a lot of the side stuff, which, again, the game encourages you to do. You need money to buy expensive equipment, swords, firearms, equipables. Those get very expensive very fast. They also require drops from these challenge dungeons, so the difficulty feels like it is very grind heavy, but I am also again happy to say that you can get by with just the normal stuff that the game gets you, at least on normal difficulty. The game gives you plenty of pistols and swords as you progress through the story. I made it all the way to the end with like a basic set of equipment. It wasn't a challenge run or anything, I just didn't really have the patience to sit down and grind a lot. So on harder difficulties, this game will become a grind, but as long as you do the side content, become a ginseng farmer, gamble chickens, fight in the arena, you should be fine on money. Also, side note, I am not someone who gets very pressed about performance. All of the footage you're seeing is from the PS4 version of the game. This is just what's most accessible for me at the moment. I don't recommend it. Game has a lot of really weird texture pop-in issues. Loading times are not super slow, but very noticeable. There's one leg game set piece that I don't have footage of because I didn't want to spoil it, but the game was running very poorly. Did not have a very good time fighting underwater with this guy, and it was just really tough. So I personally would not recommend the PS4 version if you can't help it. From what I'm hearing, PC has some issues, but maybe they'll smooth it over with some patches, who knows. I want to talk about Kyo. Kyo is gorgeous. I loved Kyo a lot, but that's because it feels like a modern day Yakuza setting, but set in Bakumatsu era Japan. They have a lot of the play spots that this series is famous for, like karaoke and hostess minigames, but also have their own spin on things like the buyo dancing and again the chicken gambling. So you could go to the karaoke bar and sing the funny Twitter song if you really wanted to, but there's also just so much more that this game has to offer. A lot of the locales are very gorgeous, especially at night. I really liked Gion, for example, this Momiji dyed area with all of these play spots to visit. So I would kind of wander a lot in this game to kind of see everything that it had to offer. It felt very familiar, but also super fresh. To bring it all to a close, Like a Dragon Ishin I think is a very important localization because it shows that the Like a Dragon series has a pulse in the West, and it is beating so loudly. I am so happy to see this series kind of grow into what it has today, having this mainstream appeal where every release feels like a party. Ishin, while late to the party, is such a welcome addition. So if you made it to the end of this video, I humbly thank you for your time and patience today. I don't even know how long this is going to be, but I talked for a lot, so... Hi! There are a lot of you now. I'm excited, but also very terrified. So hi, if you enjoyed the Raiden Shogun video and gave me all this warm love and kindness and left comments and just blew my expectations for this video, or rather the last video, out of the water, thank you so much. Holy crap. At the time of this recording, I think it's got like 41,000 views, which is like more than I'd ever think I would ever get. So be patient if you're expecting more Genshin content. I do have some stuff in the pipeline. But again, if you do like what I do, be sure to comment, like, subscribe. I'm reading everything, especially all the people fact-checking me on the last video. Thank you so much. I know I got a couple details wrong. Again, if you like what I do, drop a sub. My goal is to hit partner this year, and we are so close to that. Just need to hit 300 more subs, and we are good to go. Normally wouldn't e-beg like this or whatever, but I would love to just continue to make things. I'm just so fired up to make things. I love making things. So again, thank you for all your time today, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this. So now we're going to move on to the artist credits. Again, thank you to Zedora for the Mika Chibis. You're going to see her every time a new song pops up in the corner. Very cute. I love her very much. Thank you again, Zedora, for all of the hard work that you do. Really appreciate it. Now, the artwork for this video is going to be a collaborative effort between Miss Firestia and also Polus. Fire drew the design for Himawari for this video. It's a unique spin on the Shinsengomi Ryoma outfit with her own little flares and odds and ends attached to it, and I think she knocked it out of the park, kind of showing off her character with that. And she also helped compose the thumbnail, so thank you again, Miss Firestia. I really appreciate it. Her socials are up top. Now, for the thumbnail piece, Polus, again, knocked it out of the park with this one. She drew it based on Fire's design, so again, a collaborative effort between these two, and it is insane. I love all the rendering on this piece. I especially really adore the smug expression she has on her face. She definitely gives me Ichiban vibes, but yes, amazing piece. Thank you, Polus, so much for all of your hard work. You are so appreciated. Her socials are up top, so please be sure to give her some love. And that's going to do it for today's video. Take care of yourselves, stay gold, and I'll see you next time.